Episode 4 picks up where episode 3 leaves off. When we last left Rio, he was elbowed by Pizzazza the Mistress on her way out after she slaps Lindsay in the face. So now there's equipment explosions everywhere and things are looking bad for Jim. And just when things were about to get worse, and that's when, thanks to Rio, he manages to save Jim. And so after that, Lindsay suggested for Rio to have Jim rest in her dressing room. As for the rest of the holograms, they continued the interview without any interruptions by the Misfits since they got escorted out. So meanwhile, back with Jim and Rio, who are in Lindsay Pierce's dressing room, that's when Rio wants her to relax, and while the holograms are finishing up the interview. But then Asha catches Rio kissing Jim in the dressing room, and now Jim is really confused on how she should tell Rio or not. However, Asha was getting really concerned, but Jim just brushed it off to say, Real just making sure that I'm safe, that's all. But she is getting really concerned that if she ever told Rio who she really was, that could really hurt his feelings, and worst of all, be rejected by it. So after the interview was over, it's back to the Starlight Mansion. So meanwhile there, Mrs. Bailey just told Jericho what's going on with Ashley and what was up with her and why she would run away so much, and she had no idea. So Jericho again follows Mrs. Bailey's suggestion and went upstairs to Ashley's room. So when Jericho went to see Ashley in Ashley's room, she could tell that she's okay. Back downstairs, that's when Jericho and the girls went to see Mr. Hayes, who's a promoter from Las Vegas. Mr. Hayes just told the holograms the good news that once they're in Vegas, they'll be the opening act of the show. But little did the holograms know that they're not the only ones, because as soon as after Mr. Hayes left the Starlight Mansion, he went to visit the Misfits, and they too was part of the act. After Mr. Hayes left the mistress's apartment, that's when Pizzazz comes up with a plan to tell them, what if the holograms couldn't perform? So you know what this means? That means they'll have to enlist someone to be hired for the job. So what better way to do a favor is with Ashley. So speaking of Ashley, when she arrived at the mistress' apartment, she was asked by them if she can join them for a trip to Las Vegas. Anyway, that's what the Misfits and the Holograms did, and both of the bands had arrived in Vegas. Ah, Vegas. That's when the Holograms head right to the casino. So meanwhile there, Jim, who's still torn up and confused of what she's going to do, and how she should tell Rio who she really is or not. However, during the deception video, that's when she didn't notice that the mistress had walked past her and into the dressing room. Meanwhile, in the dressing room, the mistress had decided to send Ashley out on a mission. So in the casino room, that's when Aja, the hologram, spots her and starts chasing after her. That's when Asha realized that she just been trapped into the luggage compartment of the bus that's headed towards New York thanks to Roxy of the Misfits. Now that the bus is heading toward New York with Asha inside of it, Ashley has a guilt ridden on her face like, what have I done? Back with Mr. Hayes, he's just talking to Pizzazz of the Misfits, and little did the holograms know that Asha was heading in the bus of New York in the luggage compartment, so they agreed to split up to look for her. Meanwhile, on the bus heading towards New York, the passengers just heard pounding and screaming, and that's what causes the bus driver to pull over. So when the bus driver pulled over, he discovered that there was Asha inside the luggage compartment. So now that Asha's free from the luggage compartment, she must get back to the casino and fast. Meanwhile, there, Rio and the girls couldn't find Asha anywhere, and that's when Possess had been lying to Mr. Hayes, but the Hoggers were not aware of it yet. Meanwhile, back with Asha, she needs to get to the casinos, and so she spotted a gentleman with a cowboy hat and a motorcycle to give her a lift. But on the way there, that's when the traffic jam soon stops them, and that's when Asha thanked the gentleman for giving her a lift. She heads straight to the casino. Back at the casino, Possessor tries to persuade Rio, but he refused. And that's when the Hograms knew that they ran out of time. That's when, at the last minute, Asha shows up and just not a moment too soon. After the Too Close for Comfort song, the mistress, who were disgusted and humiliated, head back to the dressing room. And that's when Stormer and Roxy began arguing with each other how she, Ashley, must have messed up the mission somehow. And that's when Pizzazz receives a phone call from Eric. And that's when he told Pizzazz that there's a plan in motion with his right hand guy, Zipper. So back with Stormer and Ashley, who were talking to each other in the hallway, and that's when they saw Zipper and his men. And the first thing they did was to take money from the vault. After passing Stormer and Ashley by, that's when the two girls started to fall in it without them being noticed. And that's when they saw Zipper planting money in Jim's dressing room. When Stormer and Ashley saw what had happened, they had no idea what they're going to do. After Ashley and Stormer saw Zipper leave Jim's dressing room, that's when Detective Griffin shows up minutes later to tell Mr. Hayes the bad news that the casino's money was gone and whoever did it got away. Possessor the Misfit said that she wasn't sure of it, so Detective Griffin, as a precaution, went into Jim's dressing room, and lo and behold, he finds stolen money in her makeup bag, and that's when he decided to arrest Jim for robbery, which she didn't do. However, Ashley of the Starlight Girls tried to tell Detective Griffin that she's innocent, but Roxy and Possess just kind of brushed this off and said that Ashley's making it up, but really she wasn't. And that's when the mysterious woman shows up to talk to Detective Griffin in Jim's dressing room along with Ashley. While that's going on, Jim told Rio how manipulative and then, of course, humiliative that Possess was doing to her, but glad that Rio didn't take her side. That's when Detective Griffin told Mr. Hayes the good news that Jim is cleared of all charges and she's free to go. However, Pizzazz and Roxy were not happy about it and decided to leave Vegas. But what they didn't know is that Stormer was the mysterious woman all along, so thanks to her and Ashley, Jim's been cleared of all charges. It's now 6 months later, on December the 4th of 1985, back at the Starlight Music's upstairs office. That's when the Possessed had told Eric that since framing Jim wouldn't work and that the Battle of the Bands is only a couple of days away, they told Eric that he has to come up with a plan quick. So Eric suggested a much better approach to have a private detective named Manny Malone to be hired for the job. And what does Eric need Malone for? Well, I'll tell you. It's to find out who Jim really was. At the Countess's fashion show, everything was going well with the holograms. That was until the Misfits used the sunlamps to turn on the sprinklers and got everyone all wet. The holograms now had to get to the drive-in to change their clothes, but they didn't know that Private Detective Malone was following them. Well, good news, they arrived at the drive-in, but they didn't know the private detective Malone that was hired by Eric also was there. Inside with Synergy, that's when the Hawkins, after they changed their clothes, they were optimistic by winning the contest in the next couple of days. But by the time they left the drive-in, that's when Private Detective Malone went inside the secret room to where Synergy is. Well, he took a picture, first of all, and then she sets off the alarm, Synergy that is, that annoys Malone. So he picks up a jar and then smashes it into pieces. Is it really the end of Synergy? Well, we'll find out in the next episode.